Hi, we're Group 1, Section 6, and our country is Morocco. I am Matt Allen, and I am a hospitality business major.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Jennings. I'm a freshman, and I'm a pre-nursing major.
I'm Hannah Kingus. I'm a math major.
I'm Diu. I'm economics major and I'm junior.
I'm Wen Ten. I'm a junior and I'm majoring in media and information.
Hi, I'm Pei Yuan and I'm sophomore. I'm majoring in business.
And then I'm Zachary Dude. I'm a sophomore majoring in engineering. So our country is Morocco. We had several projects throughout the semester and we learned a lot about Morocco. We had a diversification of majors, so everyone had different viewpoints. So then this is going to be our presentation up next.
I'm Hannah, and I'm going to be talking about the opportunities of Morocco. Our first opportunity involves underground aquifilters that could get more fresh water into the country. This will help Morocco's agriculture, and it will let the domestic residents know the importance of saving underground aquifilters. And for the ecological dimension, it'll offer Morocco more freshwater resources. So opportunity 2 is that Morocco is investing in wind energy. So ecologically, the wind energy program could affect bird flocks. It could also help the people of Morocco get more electricity. For the prospects, it will just bring more energy to the people of Morocco, and the wind energy system will save money, and people will realize the importance of saving electricity. For opportunity number 3, the ecological change is that farmers have always relied on rain and water to water their plants, but climate change could affect this because they won't know when the rain will come. The exposure involves all of Morocco and one province in particular. Economic dimension, this could increase the irrigation systems and will allow people to get more food to their families and buy from the farmers to build a stronger economy. So ecologically, the new drip irrigation technology allows farmers to irrigate both the trees and vegetables and everything else there, and also the people will not have to rely as heavily on the rain to irrigate their plants. So for opportunity number 4, a recent study looked at a sample of 1,700 leading international firms and found that money put into reducing greenhouse gas emissions saw an internal rate of return of 27%, an indication that these investments were paying off. This implies that more companies will rise to reduce the effects of climate change, and it will also give more business opportunities for financial investors.
Hi, I'm Matt Allen. I'm going to be talking about the vulnerabilities of Morocco. A hazard for Morocco is 2,175 miles of coastal line makes it up particularly vulnerable to sea level. Some exposures are the sea level rising can cause destruction to buildings and the environment. Some sensitivities are economic dimension. The destruction caused by the rising sea levels can destroy businesses and hurt tourism in the area. Ecological dimension is the rising sea level can lead to shoreline erosion. And the political dimension is there are no legislation banning infrastructure buildings on the coastal line to stop this from continuing. For vulnerabilities 2 through 4, with climate change, the rising temperature will have a direct effect. It will affect the water availability. Morocco is rated as one of the poorest countries relating into water availability. This could cause droughts, deforestation, and decrease in tourism. Some other hazards is rising temperatures and no rainfall can cause droughts. The land used for farming and agriculture will no longer be fertile enough for people, and people will lose their jobs and the economy of Morocco will plummet. Some more sensitivities is the economic dimension. Due to the decrease in availability land to farm, the economy will fall due to farming being 40% of Morocco's workforce. Ecological dimension is it will affect the habits of animals and cause soil to become infertile. The political dimension is new ways of living instead of farming will be developed to stay afloat in the damaged economy. Some more hazards is when land becomes infertile, new land must be explored and used for farming. This new land is achieved through deforestation. Some exposures are forests, plants, animals, and their habitats will be harmed. The economic dimension, without trees, animals and wildlife that attract tourism would decrease and negatively affect the economy. Ecological dimension, the wildlife and animals and their habitats will be destroyed. And the political dimension is legislation that implements proper techniques to protect and conserve wildlife. Vulnerability 5. The Moroccan government does not budget for the consequences of climate change. Citizens of Morocco will not have an insurance or government funding to cover damages caused by the consequences of climate change. Still a developing country as well, so the citizens and the economy are vulnerable. The economic dimension is the agriculture is 40% of Morocco's workforce. If land is damaged, there will be no funding to fix it, so people continuing to grow crops. Also, certain crops won't grow in such high temperatures. The ecological dimension affects crop growth, not budgeting to fix damage. Political dimension. The government currently doesn't provide a budget for consequences of climate change, needs to financial help from the developed nations. Vulnerability 6. With climate change arising, Morocco is not adapting to economic activity outside of agriculture currently. This means that they still heavily rely on farming for their economy, and with temperature rising and droughts, deforestation occurring, the ability to have a stable economy will experience distress. Morocco needs to retreat from their agriculture and find new ways to support their economy.
Hi, I'm Melissa Jennings, and I'm going to talk about Morocco's contributions to climate change. The Industrial Revolution in Morocco started immediately after the war between Morocco and France. After the independence, Morocco needed to start developing and thriving as a country in another sector other than agriculture. Morocco welcomed new immigrants from the rural area that came to work in factories in the city. According to the Industrial Revolution, Morocco's economy is growing positively. Many technological stores have been installed in Morocco. These industries are still developing nowadays. Fossil fuel energy consumption in Morocco was last measured at 88.1% in 2013, according to the World Bank. Fossil fuel comprises coal, oil, petroleum, and natural gas products. Morocco is the only North African country that has virtually no fossil fuel resources. The expansion of renewable capacity will reduce the kingdom's dependence on imports that reached 91% in 2014. To attract private sector investments in green energies, Morocco has largely stopped fossil fuel subsidies and instead funds the difference between production cost and the selling price of green energy. Morocco has launched an ambitious strategy to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions with a focus on the energy sector. According to a Heinrich Böll Foundation report, Morocco's green investment plan is spending $11.5 billion on solar and wind energy programs over a period of 10 years. By 2030, Morocco aims to cover 52% of its energy needs with renewables. History of deforestation. The deforestation in Morocco has become a huge problem in the forests of the Atlas Mountains. This is a result of industrial logging, expansion of agriculture, extension of grazing land, and collection of firewood. Morocco loses an average of 30,000 hectares of forest each year. This, in turn, will increase the amount of carbon emitted into the environment. It will also increase the erosion rate and desertification in the country.
So the lifestyle versus climate change. Largest group, low-income, rural, still developing country. So try to go green. Carbon dioxide emissions skyrocketed in 2010 through 2012. And the carbon footprint are the sources emissions, air conditioning, fuels, electricity, freight, transport or person, purchase of goods and services, waste management, and their abilities to adapt to climate change. With the new Going Green initiative, Morocco's carbon dioxide emission may go down, but due to its current developing status, many of the consequences of climate change will negatively affect lifestyles in Morocco and cause significant damage to its economy. So who does climate change affect? The Moroccan population has more than tripled in the past 50 years. Morocco's economic activity is strongly concentrated along the coast of over 80% of its urban population living in these coastal zones. So people and families live in the coastline of Morocco, and they are rising the sea levels, deforestation. There's no legislation banning infrastructure building projects on coastline. These families are living on the coastline with a very large risk of losing their homes and maybe even death. The country should treat the families better, as farming is 40% of workforce in country. People will have no jobs, and there's also no insurance for those living on coastlines. 5 trade-offs of Morocco has to make. Morocco was ranked among the poorest country in the Arab world. Yet they are spending $11.5 billion on green investment plans, which means they are investing a lot of money into it, but that also means they do not have a lot of money to spend on their things. Morocco's dependency on fossil fuels will lower because it has largely stopped fossil fuels subsidies, but it will be replaced by a financial dependency. It was expected into development of their solar plants north that many jobs would be created, but it turned out many jobs were only temporary. There were a lot more jobs in fossil fuel, but since they are changing and no longer needed, many of those jobs were also lost. Because so much time, the money and being put into the new source of energy, the supply and the demand for the old energy goes down, so it is easier to produce and buy things, keeping those bad things in the environment and even making them better. And the last one is the wind park that has been built cost Morocco a lot of money, and now they are starting to build 2 additional wind farm over the next years.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm going to be talking about Morocco's involvement in the UNFCCC. So the Moroccan political platform. So the last decade or so, Morocco has been focusing solely on their energy sector. They realized their GHG emissions were at the top of the list of all the countries. So they have invested solely in green energy. So the following areas of intervention are agriculture, water, waste, forest, energy, and industry and housing. So Morocco currently does not have the capital to achieve their targeted goals that they have set. They have said that they are heavily reliant on international support. And then they said that they dedicate at least 15% of their overall investment budgets to adaptation to climate change. So Morocco has stated that their vision reads, make our territory and civilization more resilient to climate change while ensuring a rapid transition to a low-carbon economy. Morocco is very vulnerable to climate change due to its geographical location, so adaptation will be the cornerstone to sustainable development. So one involvement, Morocco has a legal binding agreement with the UNFCCC to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. They have committed to reduce the GHG emissions by 32% by 2030. To reach this goal, they are reaching over 50% installed electricity production capacity from renewable sources by 2025. They are reducing energy consumption by 15% by 2030. They are sustainably reducing fossil fuel subsidies, building on reforms already undertaken in recent years, and then they are substantially increasing the use of natural gas. A second involvement, they hosted the 2001 United Nations Climate Change Conference, which was called COP7. The main decisions that were made included rules for international emissions tradings among parties of the Kyoto and for the CDM were implemented. Consequences for the failure to meet emission targets was outlined. Procedures for the flexibility mechanisms were also created. And then a decision was made to consider at COP8 how to review the adequacy of commitments that may lead to discussions on commitments by developing countries in the future. So their third involvement, in June of 2015, Morocco submitted its new climate action plan, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. 39 parties, along with Morocco, formally submitted their INDC, which is the Intended Nationally Determined Contribution. So parties are encouraged to submit their INDC before, underlining their support and commitment towards a successful outcome in Paris. Morocco did this because they realized that they were going to be substantially affected by climate change, so they wanted to get in there first. There is no backtracking on these climate change plans, meaning that the level of ambition to reduce emissions will increase over time. Morocco knows that it will be heavily affected by climate change, so they're taking initiatives to reduce the effects and are highly involved in creating ways to adapt. Their fourth involvement, Morocco has turned on massive solar power plant in the Sahara Desert. There are 800 rows of 500,000 solar thermal mirrors in total, making the solar power plant alone one of the world's biggest solar thermal power plants. They'll soon be joined by hundreds of thousands more mirrors. Morocco currently relies on imported sources for 97% of its energy consumption. Investing in renewable energy will make Morocco less reliant on those imports. This technology is more expensive but is well suited for harnessing the desert solar energy. This is only one step Morocco has made and will make to support their promise to the UNFCCC. And then their fifth involvement, COP22, which is also a climate change conference, they hosted that in Marrakech, Morocco. Negotiators from almost 200 countries attended. It was an opportunity to showcase progress and start the important process of turning the Paris Agreement into a detailed blueprint for action. COP22 was nicknamed Implementation, and then countries had an opportunity to announce new initiatives, strategy, and finance.
Hi, I'm Divo. I'm going to talk about recommendations. And the first recommendation is Green Initiative. Morocco is currently involved in a green initiative that plans to reach 100% renewable energy by 2050. We believe that they should continue with this initiative. However, they should push back their goal of 100% renewable energy to 2016 to 2070 in order to decrease the funds needed. For example, Morocco should also set more short-term goals like 2020, 15% renewable energy, and 2040, 70% renewable energy, and 60 to 70, 100% renewable energy. The second recommendation is that coastline insurance plan. Morocco's government currently does not budget for the consequences of climate change, nor does it have a concrete set of insurance plans available to citizens' vulnerability to these consequences. Particularly, people living on this coastline, we believe that Morocco's government should start a budget plan to protect their people. Morocco's northeast coast is increasingly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Sea level rise, storm surges, and coastal flooding. Morocco mostly depend on fishing, farming, and livestock, reason for their income and wealth, as climate change brings more severe and frequent storms and rising seas. The various assets that attract more tourists and investment are threatened. The third recommendation is economic plan. Agriculture makes up 40 to 45 of the workforce in Morocco, but only 55 of their annual GDP. The services sector currently accounts for half of their annual GDP, so this shows much potential. Also, industries such as milling, construction, and manufacturing makes up 25 of their GDP. Morocco has stated that they want to improve the sectors of tourism, telecoms, and textile sectors. World's third largest phosphate producer, petroleum imports are very expensive. Natural disasters pose a very real threat to the economy of Morocco. Our recommendations is for the workforce percentage to decrease in agriculture, as droughts and floods could have a severe impact. If they rely too heavily on agriculture, the economy will fall and a large percentage of Moroccans will lose jobs. Rising sea level will not deteriorate their fishing exports, but being able to invest in industrial and service sectors will bring new jobs and sources in income. They could export these goods and provide financial support for their adaptations to climate change. They should also advertise tourism more, as they would bring in a sufficient amount of income as well.
Hi, I'm Tan. Today I'm going to discuss Morocco's financial goals for future generations. The government will need to allocate funds towards building a budget for the consequences of climate change. Also, they will allocate funds for an insurance plan for the citizens most vulnerable to such consequences. Our recommendation on budgeting for this goals, for example, Morocco's goal is to be 100 renewable energy by 2050. If they push that back 10 to 20 years, they can move those funds to building a budget and investing in other potential sources of income. A consequence of this plan is that they will not be 100% renewable energy by the time they want it. However, in the wide scheme of things, the time they lost will benefit them more than hurt them. Next part is the concerns of vulnerable group. In Morocco, the most vulnerable groups are citizens on the coastline, farmers, and women. So how we will address the concerns of this group? Firstly, our plan is to carry out efficiently. It will provide citizens on the coastline the comfort of knowing they have insurance if flooding occurs. The most vulnerable group of women will suffer the most without insurance in case of flooding, and indirectly suffer if farming declines without a backup plan. Since our plan covers both these factors, we are also acknowledging many common concerns they have, and they will be supported in any cases of natural disasters that may occur.
All right, so we were Section 6, Team 1. This is our presentation on Morocco. As you can see, throughout all the projects, we became very informational on the topic, and we hope you like the presentation. All right, there we go.
Like and subscribe. That was great.
Good work.
That was natural.